Okay, so how long are we going to need for an intro to explain just everything? Well, this is the island of Cyprus. No disagreements so far. However, if you turn on a geopolitical map, you will see... well, that's got to have an interesting backstory. Now, precisely because I'm not into making hour-long videos, just half-hour-long videos that I assumed would be 12 minutes long, I'm actually going to outsource the heavy lifting of the history into the next video, because the history of Cyprus is just way too intricate and fascinating a saga to leave it in the margins. Though, to be honest, you might as well just go check out Kings and Generals. They did a great breakdown as well. The bite-sized revision version. Okay, British colony, independence, sort of. Britain held onto these air bases. Unrest, a big 1974 war. The UN draws this big line that separates the Republic of Cyprus, that is predominantly Greek-speaking, from the declared Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, or from here on in, TRNC, low-angle flag shot, which is mainly Turkish-speaking but unrecognised as a nation internationally except by, well, Turkey. Now that is a disgracefully brief summary, so watch the history video after this one for a little bit more nuance. Can't tell you just how uninterested I am in having a geopolitical slap fight occurring in the comments below. I am categorically not taking a side, so in the video I'll be mostly referring to the TRNC as Northern Cyprus and the Republic, the south of Cyprus, as Southern Cyprus, because that's where they are. Just no beef. And if I don't use a particular form of words you approve, or particular absence of nuance that you would like, you can just flick through the dictionary and find bad faith criticism and then grow up. But to start off with statements that no one could possibly get mad at, I think some of the highlights in the north actually beat out some of what you can see in the south, which is why I was super buzzing that we made it over, as it's not entirely straightforward to get to. So after 2 days in the south, we got a cab to take us to the north and across the line. The road to Nicosia was pretty uneventful. We only caught brief glimpses of the UN buffer. I mean, best I got was this sign and this unimpressive 3 seconds. I mean, it's basically a line of barbed wire with just some waste ground around the other side. The University of Nicosia even overlooks it, so it's not that special. The UN buffer line, as it's drawn, is not even that precise. I mean, according to GPS, at this exact moment, we crossed into the UN buffer, but there were still houses and just, well, all these trees. Anyway, having a taxi takes across the border seemed like the easiest choice. Having not tried it before and not knowing what the sitch is, just seemed better having a native speaker, you know, just in case something was amiss. And hey, bottom line, it was very straightforward. No real drama. The border crossing, which, no shock, you can't film, very uneventful. Because we're in a cab, waved through on the Greek side, quick passport check at the Turkish booth on the other side, whole thing, about 15 minutes, nothing intimidating. And then we're on the Turkish side, and it's pretty normal. There's many things that flash past the window too rapidly to get any decent footage. Huge TRNC flags, a TRNC flag etched on the mountainside, and even a bright gold mosque. I'm actually really annoyed about this. So you've got this huge mosque just shining bright gold, like in the middle of the landscape. And I was trying to film this from the car window, and for some reason my camera was just so focused on the smears on the near window, it was all completely out of focus. So I deleted that shot when I was short on space, and I figured we'd just catch it on the return journey, and then we never came back the same way. So all I've got is this shot from someone else's website, because it's so new, no one's actually taken any photos of it yet. So there you go. They have Burger King in the north, so I guess that's something. There's quite a lot of English signage around too, which I had been wondering about before we arrived. But yeah, if you're expecting something like that mildly offensive Orientalist intro from Aladdin, yeah, this is not it. Anyway, my footage for the drive was bad. We got into Kyrenia. The weather didn't really look too pleased to see us, but there was a little bit of blue poking through. We stopped off at a cafe to have brunch, and thanks to the lira being so weak right now, all of this was about 12 quid for breakfast, drinks, and just everything all in for both of us. But yeah, nothing like a spot of Turkish coffee and a Turkish tea to get you in the mood. Well, walks along the seawall, and I got all I wanted for Christmas. I mean, look at that sunshine, as well as just how beautiful the water is. And that is Kyrenia Castle, a castle turned Venetian fort, hence the massive bastions. I mean, if you told me this was just the next town on from Hania or Rethymno on Crete, well, I mean, I'd deny it furiously, because there's no way I'd let something this huge get past me, but I mean, it might as well be. The layout feels very familiar, and the relaxed Venetian port vibe was just as present. The inside of the castle is a bit of a funny mix of former medieval parts and upgrades for the age of gunpowder. I feel like in modern times they could have selected a slightly more sympathetic material for the roofs. But anyway, amazing views. There's also the Shipwreck Museum with a boat just like over 2,000 years old. We got a drink overlooking the harbour and took the weight off our shoulders. Normally this would be where I'd get an espresso vanity shot, but even though we'd ordered a coffee, it never actually materialised, so I just got this cold beer instead. Efes is everywhere here. I'm kind of split on it. It's okay, but it's not that great. Now, I'm a bit embarrassed about what happened next. We tried to find the bus station, but there was like nothing at all at the pin where all the maps had pointed. So we went to here, which is the terminal, but there was no one there either, no tickets, nothing doing. Just some guys in a cafe directed us back to where we started. Now, we knew in advance there were no official bus timetables, but I really wasn't prepared for there to be no bus stops either. That feels like giving us a rather unfair disadvantage. Anyway, yeah, look at us, the tourists who couldn't figure out the bus network because everything was in Turkish. Well, eventually we just had to give up. We jumped in a cab, which was more than we were aiming to spend, but in the end it was like 900 lira, which, because the lira's at rock bottom, was about £45, which for a major connection across the whole island for both of us, it's like, oh, yeah, well, it's actually not that much, really. Okay. But I really defy you to do better without considerable faff. Well, the mountain range that isolates the north coast is quite stunningly beautiful, but then all of a sudden it drops off on the other side onto a remarkably flat plain. Now, Cyrene was one thing, but really not doing a very good job of getting footage on the road this trip. Anyway, we got into Famagusta about the time a thunderstorm seemed to be playing out just to the north. The room was pretty nice. Once again, British plugs, same as the south, along with the driving on the left. It was a bit of a noisy one. At one point, I thought the aircon had gone into like beast mode, but it turned out there was a petrol station next door and the car wash was just pretty intense sounding. Well, our accommodation was in the new town, but a short walk away, and these are the walls of Famagusta. And not to dive headlong into this, but this is probably the best example of Venetian defences we've seen anywhere. I mean, Herakleon's walls are taller and more extensive, but the whole place is lined with basketball courts and parked cars, which is what basically everyone does with their Venetian fortifications, use it as parking space. But this you can clearly see without obstruction, and they're in a great state of preservation. Look, as historic atmospheric towns on Cyprus go, Famagusta easily clinches it as the most exciting. Probably should have opened with that, you know, especially when I was trying to get Jen enthused about including Northern Cyprus on our trip. It's packed to the brim with ruined churches of both Gothic and Byzantine architectural conventions. It's quite unlike anything else with just the amount that's there, yet remarkably few people. Yeah, based on the physical footprint of the town, Famagusta felt quite empty, like only a third the number of humans it would take just to occupy the buildings. But not to be outdone, they're trying to get as many sleeping dogs under one car at once. And yeah, not a huge choice of restaurants either. This place seemed pretty buzzing. We asked for a menu, but nope, there isn't one. There's just a huge spread they bring out to everyone as standard, so okay. And oh, whoa, okay, you were not kidding. Yeah, we really enjoyed this. Stayed out late that evening, went home very full and content. So next morning was the one morning I didn't leap out of bed too early. We had a cab coming at 10, so rather than going to the old town, we stuck around the new for coffee and breakfast. The coffee was good. It wasn't exceptional, but it was vivid, it had interesting flavours, and good effort had gone in, so that's good. Watching this Turkish presenter reading his notes from a laptop, and nope, still not sure what's happening here. So we got a cab just out of the north of the town. The first place we're going, the cab driver hadn't heard of it, which was surprising as this is one of the most significant Bronze Age sites on the island. Then again, I would assume that was common knowledge because that's just who I am now. Had been worried it would be closed, but there are a couple of people hanging out in the sort of office, and for a quantity of lira approximating 50p, we got to explore this site that could use a little tidying, sure, but just thrilled it was open for us to explore. Even though there's no like towering remains here, Enkomi is hugely significant, especially for finds. There's a bunch in the British Museum, and every time I see one that was found in Enkomi, I'm doubly pleased to have witnessed it for ourselves. We then walked down the road, which probably not what most people do, but it made sense with the chain of things we wanted to see, and look, scarcely any vehicles around in this bit. There was this monastery with surprisingly extensive museum collections. Then there was the catacombs. Almost makes me want to make some very specific deposits, just so a future archaeologist has to utter the sentence that these catacombs contain 2 cat tombs and 2 hat combs. Just me. Okay. There are also these tombs that were sadly not open apart from just to look at from the gates. And then alongside the road and round to Salamis. But first, quick stop for a drink and to make a fuss of the doggies.
Hi, doggy.
Salamis was amazing. Like, on an island already famed for its Roman ruins, these are more impressive in height and complexity than both Kurion and Paphos. Sadly, we then had to cross this industrial wasteland on foot. I mean, yeah, it's just the price you pay. I mean, God, this must be among some of the best beaches on Cyprus. I mean, not least for the absence of other people. I'm not claiming to have examined each beach exhaustively, but Larnaca is nowhere near as nice, and Paphos is this, for the most part. It was kind of windy, which was keeping the heat bearable. It's about an hour walk from Salamis to Glapsides, or Glapsides, whichever it is, with this ruined basilica on the way, if you know where to look. We stopped off for a bit of a rest. The water temperature, well, early May, on a fairly windy day. I mean, it passed the testes test. Like, it just hits you in the nuts and it's like, yeah, okay, that's not bath water, but it's not going to be a problem. I have just such happy memories of this day. Exploring on foot, the warmth, the open countryside, the beach. It was just great. And it was still only mid-afternoon when we got the cab back, so took off on foot to see more of the old town of Famagusta. It is remarkable just how separated the old city and the new town are. It's a completely clean break. And look, I'm not saying I'm against it. I mean, quite the opposite. I think it has the effect of keeping the old town particularly special. It's just unusual that it's this complete island, essentially. I mean, I can't think of another Venetian town like it where the old and new don't bleed across at all. Spent some more time seeing the ruined churches, heard Incubus playing from this place, and realised I was hazardously low on coffee. Interestingly, the dude didn't know about iced espresso, but maybe an iced Americano, which was pretty great and about the same thing. Well, we ended up here for dinner with great views across the rooftops. Not that you care, but it was actually Jen and my 5th wedding anniversary that day. Dinner was fine, and I hadn't seen one of these in a while, but the world's weirdest format to serve water. Dessert menu. Yep, okay. The baklava was actually proper decent, so that was dope. Walked back at dusk along the Venetian walls with the call to prayer echoing along the length. Didn't sleep well that night, not least with the call to prayer kicking in at around 4:45. But got up to catch the sunrise. Was surreal to see the main road just completely deserted. The aim was to catch sunrise from the walls, which I sort of managed. Scuttled around the town, mainly to catch the ruined churches I hadn't seen the previous day. Oh, there are so many! Anyway, with time and, annoyingly, camera space running out, gonna have to make some tough choices. Well, nothing was actually stirring in the old town, so I went a bit further into the new town to find some coffee, and this place was, yeah, again, pretty great. I know it's not a big enough sample size, and the coffee here definitely wasn't bad, but the south narrowly clinches it with the better coffee. If I could just underline, because of the status of the TRNC as unrecognised, it might give you the impression you're going to find some failed state with residents walking around on dirt streets. So, yeah, tell me that this doesn't look like any other vibrant European city. This is not Somalia. The TRNC is a very chill place with modern shops and a way of life only fractionally different from the UK, mostly by virtue of the heat and this use of the Costa franchise, which I have a feeling would not have approved of this change of their logo and branding. Well, it was time to leave Famagusta. Interesting twist, on our route back, the cab driver opted for the Famagusta checkpoint, which was smart as there were no queues, except they wouldn't let him through even with the international driving licence paperwork he had, so we ended up back on the Turkish side and heading for Lefkoşa, which was another hour. So we saw the middle of the north again, and once again, no particularly riveting footage to speak of. Thankfully, the Lefkoşa crossing was very easy, though the queues were backing up on the other side. It was all made much more gripping by the fact that I was busting for the bathroom. However, even though we are now back on the south of the line, I am very happy to say the story didn't entirely end there. Having looked around the south of Nicosia, I could not resist having a go at just one last thing. So here's the deal. This is Ledra Street, and it carries on across the buffer zone. It's a pedestrian-only crossing, and you just show your passport to one side and then the other, and you're across. So we just had a brief look around the northern side of Lefkoşa, and gosh darn it if I didn't know this was here, but 90 seconds from the border you see this, and How cool is this? This is the Boyuk Han, which dates to just after the Ottomans taking over, and it's filled with quirky little shops. Sadly, one of the major things I wanted to see on the other side, this is the Selimiye Camii, probably got that wrong. It's formerly a cathedral, but it was clad head to toe in scaffolding, all except the one tower. And you know what it's like, once the scaffolding goes up on a cathedral, it's years before it comes off, so that's too bad, I guess. But, I mean, look, okay, at least it's having work done to keep it nice. Had a quiet drink not far from the checkpoint, and then just walked back again. Super easy, back to the Greek side to catch a bus and get to the airport. And look, this gives me a degree of hope. It's not everything, but to be able to stroll through, ballpark 5 minutes to go through both checkpoints if the queues haven't built up too much, and assuming you've got a British or EU passport, just to have a quiet drink on the other side and then stroll back. Look, these aren't two communities hell-bent on killing each other. This is an ageing geopolitical split that for many of the next generation of Cypriots on both sides of the line just isn't really a thing. There's a generation coming up who have no interest in this still having the trappings of a war zone. They're just happy to have an iced espresso and hang out together. Final thoughts on the north. People were really warm and smiley and pleased to see us. I mean, if you asked us what we were doing in the north or why, couldn't tell if that was just a translation or genuine incredulity, but they were definitely pleased to see us. English levels were impressive. Not as many people fluent as the south, but everyone still managed simple exchanges, and with most people you could hold a conversation. Small word of caution. I have seen this plant before, but I have never had such an issue with it needling me in the foot every time I stepped off the path to get a shot. End of every day, you're still yanking them out of your socks. It's brutal. In case you're wondering, as a predominantly Islamic area, the north is very chill. Alcohol is available from almost every store, beachwear at the beach. Basically, as long as you're not doing something that would be considered antisocial anywhere else, like urinating into someone's handbag while burning the national flag. No, of course I'm not animating that. Look, you'll be entirely fine. And yeah, having now done it, I can confirm that no part of getting to or being in the north was all that stressful. And considering all the amazing things we got to experience from making the crossing, I am so glad we did. It's a big recommend from me. And hey, here's hoping that as the years go on, things become even more chill and the buffer zone becomes even more permeable to the point that everyone agrees it just isn't needed anymore. However, as promised earlier, next episode is going to be a quick-fire summary of Cypriot history from ancient times all the way up to the present day, so check that out. In the meantime, the music you've been hearing in the background is ours. You can find that on bandcamp.com, and if you want to support the channel, that's the place to do it. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll catch you very soon.